Meet Gabriella. It's 7:45 p.m., and she's still on her computer while most of her team has logged off. She receives a Teams notification. Her CEO sends her a message. It reads, "Need revised marketing strategy ASAP." Gabriella exhales, slumps in her chair, and begins rubbing her forehead. Gabriella's been in marketing for over 25 years, and she's seen it all. She's seen product launches, merges, new leadership, but this time it feels different. The pace of change is relentless. New goals every week, new faces in leadership, new metrics to focus on that contradict last week's priorities, and it feels like the ground is always shifting beneath her. And it's really affecting her confidence. She's second-guessing every decision she makes. She's hesitating before speaking up in meetings. And she's replaying conversations that she's having with her colleagues over and over again. Gabriella's CEO is incredibly bold, very ambitious, and she's wondering if her CEO sees her as someone who is capable or replaceable. At home, it's completely different. She has a fantastic relationship with her husband and her teenage kids, but when Monday comes, the anxiety returns. The pressure, the fear of not being able to keep up. And what Gabriella really wants is to be more composed, to be able to respond rather than react to all the change that's happening. What she really wants is to get out of her own head and to trust herself again. Today, I'm speaking with Anne Bonney, change leadership expert, speaker, and author, who helps leaders to overcome resistance, communicate courageously, and thrive through the discomfort of change. With over 10 years of experience working with organizations like NASA, Under Armour, and Lockheed Martin, Anne is recognized for helping organizations build resilience and emotional intelligence through times of transformation. And I'm excited to hear how Anne would help someone like Gabriella to find the courage to handle all of these changes with confidence and composure. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Anne, I was reading about you. I went on your website and I saw that you, from a very young age, went through a lot of change. And I know you speak about change now, but you lived it even as early as the second grade. And I thought it would be great for you to kick things off by telling us that story.
Yeah, sure. I got home from second grade in Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, and my big brother and I got sat down at the dining room table, and my parents said, "All right, guys, we're moving to Saudi Arabia." And I was like, okay, cool. I have no idea what that means. I was 7. I don't know what that means, but trundled off in the summer before third grade off to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. We lived there for a year. Then we lived in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for a year. We lived in Cairo, Egypt for a year. And then we lived in Athens, Greece for 4 years. We got to calm down with the moving. Then I went off to boarding school, and since then I've just moved a lot. And it just kind of plants a different expectation in your brain about change and about letting go and moving forward. They say the monkeys have to let go of this branch to grab onto that branch. So it gives you a whole new perspective on that.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure some of it was hard for you too, right? I mean, what were some of the things that you did experience having to make all those moves? I mean, I know you were really young, but when you reflect on how much moving you did, I guess, how did that affect you?
Well, I mean, every year for third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, I was walking into a classroom with strangers, where I knew
Yeah.
nobody. And so that was a little hard, though I've never had too much trouble making friends, perhaps because we have moved so much.
Yeah.
But also the cultural changes, moving from Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia as a little blonde girl was a significant change in culture. And learning to just have different expectations and behave in a different way in public to respect the culture that we lived in, and still maintain sort of our own culture as Americans within our family. And it was just an interesting mix looking back on it of new and old, and my parents trying to sort of keep some of the roots while also exploring the world, so, but that brought some challenges.
Yeah. And I can imagine that the experience of what you went through really ingrained a way to shift perspective often, right? Because they say that now, right? You travel because you want to learn about new cultures, and you do that to be able to gain new perspectives. I mean, you didn't have a choice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But like, do you feel that it offered, like it opened up new ways of thinking for you? Like, how did it? Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't open. It was always open. I mean, from a very, very young age. I mean, because we moved 4 times before we moved to Saudi. So, I mean, we were moving a lot anyway.
Yeah.
My dad worked for Marriott Hotels. So they were moving him around as he got promoted and all that stuff. But I learned that different is not bad.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest lesson that has served me so, so, so well, is that different cultures, different ways of doing things, different climates, different people, it's not bad. And I think so many people, when they stay same for so long, start to fear different, which is, I think, where our challenges with change come in.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you said it's not that you had to open yourself to you were always open.
It just was.
Right. And you've remained open.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's something that stayed with you, and you're kind of in this space, and then you look at others who are feeling so stuck, and they're holding on to things, and they don't like change, and you're now imparting that wisdom onto them. And what I also learned about you is that not only have you traveled so much, you also have had so many different passions and hobbies. I mean, I read that you volunteered in an elephant sanctuary and you sung opera. So it's like you've lived many different lives.
I have. It's true. It's true. And, as I do a little bit of youth speaking with kids in high school, kids in college, and the main message I have is you're going to have a winding road, perhaps, in life.
Yeah.
And so just pick something and go. Do it. If it feels right, like, go try it. Because, my path is particularly windy. It's been really, really fun, and I wouldn't change a darn thing. It's not for everyone, and that's absolutely fine. We all pick our own way. But being willing to make those moves and to shift passion. When I told my parents I was leaving my job as a special needs teacher to go train animals at the aquarium in Boston, they were like, "Wait, what? You went to college to become a teacher?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but like I have this opportunity to go train seals and sea lions. I've always wanted to do that." And they're like, "Okay, as long as you're not living in our house." So I mean, it's letting go. It's the willingness to say, yes, that was amazing, and I learned so many things, and I have this cool opportunity over here to try this too. And as I moved through from special ed teaching to animal training to working for Under Armour and helping them launch that brand to working in group exercise for a large gym chain, and then leaving it all behind 10 years later to become a speaker, everything I learned in all of those careers has benefited me in making this career that I've been in longer than any other one, and I feel like I'm only getting started. Everything I learned has benefited me in my business now.
Yeah. And now that you are sharing this message to people about change and how to embrace change, I'm sure that you can, from the outside in, be able to diagnose a bit as to why people fall into that pattern of not being able to let go and really struggling to. From your perspective, and what do you think is the cause of that? Why are people so resistant to change?
Well, basically because their brains are working right. Our brains are not built to move towards unknowns. Like back when our brains were invented, there was a whole lot more mortal danger, and same meant safe.
Yeah.
Right? If I've survived it before, I'll probably survive it again. It's a new situation. Holy crap, I might die. Right? Back in caveman days, that was legit. The brain didn't get the upgrade as the world has modernized, and any stressor, your brain goes, oh my God, danger, danger. We might not survive this, go back to what is known. So I always like to let people know that the discomfort that they feel and the resistance to change and that stress means your brain is working right. It doesn't mean you should stop. I say that discomfort is a speed bump, not a stop sign. Let's stop, let's pay attention. What do I need to know here as I step into this?
Yeah.
But oftentimes we want to step into it anyway. That's why I call it dancing in the discomfort.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you why you chose that title, and I think that you answered it right there.
Well,
right?
everybody talks about the comfort zone, right? But
Yeah.
I'm talking about the discomfort zone because that's where all the fun happens. And by fun, I mean terrible stuff. It's awful.
Well,
but it's worth it.
It's all worth it.
It's
just I told you before we started recording, I was in New York City this morning, and I met with someone, and this was the topic of the conversation he and I were having. It was all about stepping into the unknown. And he was someone who's incredibly talented, very smart. And when given an opportunity to advance or to do something new, he balked at it because he's like, I've never really studied this. I don't really know it. And I said to him, can I challenge you here a bit? And he goes, yeah. And I said, that's the sign that you need to do it. That's what is going to lead to your growth and development. And I know you as an incredibly smart, intelligent person. You got to trust yourself that when you get to that place that's unknown, you're going to know how to figure it out.
Right. Well, and it reminds me of a question that our guide on Kilimanjaro asked my friend. We were climbing Kilimanjaro. We're on summit day. It's 2 a.m. We're exhausted. We're at 17,000 feet. We can't breathe. We're nauseous. We're exhausted. Like it was awful. And she was freaking out. And I'm trying to reassure her. I'm trying to tell him about it. He moves me out of the way and he looks at her straight in the face. He goes, are you hurt or are you scared? And she paused for a second. She was like, I'm scared. And he goes, all right, cool. Looks at me. He goes, she's fine. And we like kept going. But I mean, and that's the question we got to ask. Is there a bus coming or am I just scared of what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Are you hurt or are you scared?
Are you hurt or are you scared? Yeah, I've used the analogy of the snake and the rope with people. You know, it's like if you see a snake and, you know, it's a poisonous snake, it's a great thing that your brain tells you this is not safe, run, right? But if you look closer and you're like, wait a minute, that's just a rope on the ground, then it's just a perceived threat.
Right.
It's not an actual threat.
Right. And that brings up such an interesting point that I've been noodling on a lot lately, which is anticipatory stress. We stand on the porch of our old comfort zone, looking at the discomfort zone, thinking about all the bad things that are going to happen, right? It's that anticipatory stress. We make it so much worse. Oh my God, that rope right there is going to bite me. And it's like, oh, shoot, it's rope. You know, it's really not that bad once we start dancing in it. So yeah, it's that anticipatory stress.
What you just said there, I can't tell you how much that comes up with people I chat with. I mean, it's the idea about the thing, not the thing itself.
Rarely
right?
is
Like,
it
for
the
example, someone I don't know, I just thought of this. He had a lot of call resistance. Like, his work required him to call companies and talk to a gatekeeper and all these kind of things. But he would be in the stew of his fear before he even picked up the phone, and right? He wouldn't be able to. And when I helped him to realize it's the idea about it that's freaking him out, not the actual call. The call itself, he's like, yeah, in the end, when I make the call, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's actually really not that bad. It's just the thinking about the thing and your title of your book actually, I think, is really close to what we're talking about, right? It's called Get Over It. And you have practical tips in there to really help people to be able to embrace change.
Right.
What have you found, or for people who have read the book, Anne, do they give you something, like, do they tell you, you know, this tip or these tips, these are the ones that really helped me the most? Have you gotten feedback like that?
Yes, but not consistently with one specific tip. I mean,
Okay.
the section on Punch It, Margaret is helpful for people because it's that it gives you that 5 seconds of courage to take that step when we're, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Another one I hear a lot, I guess, is think about what could go right. We have all of the things in our brain telling us all the things that are going to go wrong and all the things that could go badly and all the bad stuff. Those thoughts are random, but our active thinking is not. And what we can do is say, okay, cool, yes, all of that bad stuff could happen. And what if this goes really well? And wandering down that rabbit hole for a little while, because that can help give you the courage to move forward.
Yeah, it's like the picture of like a weight scale sometimes comes into my mind of like, you could either be focusing on all the things that could go wrong and it's leaning this way. And what you're suggesting is shift it into what could go right, what could be the possible outcomes that you experience. So I guess, do you find that works better than trying to reduce the fear around what could go wrong, or is it a little bit of mix of both? Because you can look at it from either angle, right? I want to reduce the fear as much as possible, but I heard you say increase the reward as much as possible.
Yeah, and it all depends on the person and their own perspective, and the direction they come at it with. I do think there is a trap in trying to reduce the fear because the fear is always going to be there. So many people will use that as an excuse. Oh, I'll wait till I feel brave. You're never going to feel brave. It's terrifying. Every once in a while, I'm like, why do I do this work? Because I live this. Because if I'm not living it and I'm not going and doing things that I think I'll fail at, I gotta live what I'm speaking. So I go and do a 10-day meditation retreat. I go and try to make it to the top of Kilimanjaro. I do these things where I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna work. It's terrifying. Don't wait for it to not be scary. Yeah. So there's a trap in, let me reduce the fear because that could take forever. And when are you actually going to get there? It's how do I move despite the fear and take that fear with me?
Yeah. Or here's another way to frame it too. And I found that, I agree with you. It depends on the person. Sometimes this has helped, which is pointing out what will be the experience if you never actually do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. If you fast forward 20, 30, 50 years from now and you're still in the same place, what would it be like then?
Ooh, which again, now this is actually increasing the fear of not doing it. Now you're balancing the fear of doing it versus not doing it. A friend of mine, Brett Easton, I'm meeting with him to be on my podcast, Dancing in the Discomfort Zone. He wrote a book that says uncomfortable either way. Like if you give it up or you don't, you're going to be uncomfortable either way. So which do you pick? And I think that's a great approach.
I like that.
Yeah.
You're going to be uncomfortable either way. So why not go through the discomfort that will then lead you to the outcome that you ultimately want?
Right. And basically you're picking between the discomfort and the discomfort you don't know. And so often our brains will just default to what we know. I know it's bad, but at least I stay with it. That's why we stay in jobs and careers we don't like, why we stay in relationships that are toxic, why, all the things.
Here's what I sometimes throw a bomb at people with. It's like, well, how do you really know that it's going to be there? Like, in other words, in what world has there ever been a job that has always been the same for, maybe years and years ago? But in today's world, you really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Right. Tell me someone who has a job right now that they have absolute 100% certainty that it will be there tomorrow. Yeah. Because they don't.
It's the illusion of security.
Yeah.
Right? There is no guarantee of anything.
Yeah.
Right. That's part of this letting go thing is understanding, yes, I'm letting go, but it doesn't mean I'm losing. Right.
Yeah.
So often when things are changing, our brains immediately go to what am I losing? Yeah. And again, thoughts are random, thinking is not. My thought of what I'm losing is going to pop into my head. Okay, cool. And what are you gaining?
Yeah.
And again, thinking, what is that next thing you're grabbing? Because it makes a difference.
What people perceive as what they're losing is that security. Right. Or they're losing, right, control. Mm-hmm. I'm losing the control of this.
The illusion of control. Yes.
Right. You never had the control and you never had the security. It wasn't ever there. Nope. So I find that to be one of the most freeing things for me personally, is to realize I have very little control over what's going on and just lean into the chaos of it all.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of freeing, like jumping off a cliff, you know? I mean, it's like, I'm flying. Oh, crap, I'm falling. You know, I mean, like, it is terrifying and wonderful all at the same time. But I agree with you. I agree with you because I am a leaper. You know, a leap and a net will appear. The amazing things about us as humans is we figure things out and we forget that. We don't trust that unless we've figured a bunch of stuff out. And we can say, all right, cool, I'm uncomfortable with this. I don't know what's going to happen. But I've figured out a lot of cool stuff before and I'm kind of a badass. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be okay. That trust is what gives you the courage to move forward.
And I think, Anne, in your experience, you've had a lot of evidence to support that. And for anyone listening, what I think is important to take into account is you need to create those experiences, right? You have to actually do that multiple times because the subconscious mind may continue to call out BS until you actually do it. But once you act on it, it's like this momentum that gets built where it's like a muscle, right? Maybe you haven't picked up the weight in a while, but if you start to, the muscle's going to eventually grow. I mean, it's the only way it could. If you're lifting the weight, of course the muscle is going to grow. You're going to feel much more confident in moving into the unknown.
And you're using the weightlifting analogy as an analogy, but it's actually literal. There's a piece of your brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex, which strengthens your ability to work through challenging things, to be tenacious, and to have grit in the face of challenges. And so this is why I did my TEDx talk on intentionally seeking out uncomfortable experiences, because that strengthens not only your belief and your trust in yourself, but that literal muscle in your brain, your anterior midcingulate cortex, to allow you to be able to deal with all of the uncomfortable changes that we can't control.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, it's literal weightlifting when you go do something uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you don't have to jump out of a plane, right? You could just order something different at the restaurant. You can just take a different route to work or wear an outfit that you're like, wow, I wouldn't normally wear that. I'm a little uncomfortable, but I look really good, you know? It's those little low-stakes discomforts. Yep.
Having the conversation with the barista at the Starbucks, or asking the Lyft driver about how their day's going. Like a little thing that you're like, I normally wouldn't do this, and I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone to do this little thing. Someone recently I talked to was like, his name was Mark Black. He said, he'll take a cold shower like every day, and that's his thing, right? And you just got to find your thing, and it doesn't need to be this big monumental thing. It can be quite simple. By the way, did you do that 10-day meditation retreat? Did you do that?
I did. Yeah.
How was that?
Successfully, too. It was a very cool experience. 10 days not talking at all.
Silence,
and meditating for 10 hours a day. Yeah, I literally was pretty sure, and everybody who knows me was pretty sure I would not be able to do it.
I did one as well. That's why I was asking. I was curious what your experience was. Yeah. And it was like a roller coaster for me, meaning there were moments of pure serenity and peace and moments of crazy disruption. Where I felt like I was going to have to jump off the top of the building kind of thing. Like I was like losing it. And it was just wild to watch myself through that experience. So did you have that kind of like ebb and flow within the 10 days?
A little bit. Yeah, not quite to that degree. I mean, but the whole point of the thing is to make us less reactive, right? So to be able to sit in the midst of, oh my God, my legs are falling asleep and they're never going to move again.
Yeah.
No, I'm probably okay. Let me just keep sitting here for another couple minutes. And the whole monkey mind, I thought of my brain as a 3-year-old in a department store, just running off. And she was wearing overalls, so I'd be just like, come on over, come on back. Come on back, almost constantly.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, it was amazing. On day 8, my brain started writing the comedy routine because you're sitting in a room of 40 people meditating, not moving, in complete silence. So you're hearing every gurgle from the vegan food you're eating that you're not used to eating. You're hearing every belch and every toot and every like random noise. And there's just so much that in the moment was hilarious about it. I had to like resign myself during that hour meditation to just let my brain, let the 3-year-old run. And then I went back with a contraband pen that I had brought in and I ripped apart a Kleenex box and wrote all the things down. Because I'm like, write it down so it's there. So when you're ready to touch that, you can do it, but get back to what you're doing. Got back to it. When I got home and read it, I thought I was going to have a Netflix special. I thought this was the funniest comedy routine anybody in the world had ever heard. I read it when I got home. I'm like, this is stupid. It was the dumbest thing that is only funny in context. Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
you go
but
a little
the way you
cuckoo.
described it, that was my experience too, of like everything being amplified.
Yeah.
Everything was amplified.
Yep.
And noticeable. And I observed it was like slowing down the frames of a movie where you can really experience all of it. And I remember you mentioned you said it was a little girl like running. How did you describe
My little
that?
3-year-old in the department store was my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
How I went into an analogy like that. Have you ever seen the movie The Incredibles?
Yeah. Jack.
Okay. Jack. I just kept picturing my mind as Jack. Right? And Jack at times was really funny and cute. Other times he was shooting laser beams out his eyes, right? Like just creating havoc in my mind. But I remember that it's a baby. It's this little baby, and I can't get mad at it. I can't argue with it. I can't fight with it. I have to just let Jack do what Jack's going to do, and sooner or later he'll calm down. See, and I think all this is relatable to change, right? And how we work with our own minds. I think that, for example, with Gabriella, she's really overthinking a lot of things in this story. Like she's really overwhelmed by her own monkey mind. So with someone like that from the story you read, where would you start with Gabriella?
Well, one of the things I think she needs to think about is priorities. When you're in a situation, she's overwhelmed. It's very clear she is incredibly overwhelmed. And so much has been added to her plate and has changed. And so the question needs to be, this is not sustainable. We need to acknowledge that. We also need to acknowledge that all of this overwhelm comes from her desire to do a good job, right? So even though she feels like she's scraping and not able to keep up, she very much is doing it from a place of very good intention.
Yeah.
And so by acknowledging that, it kind of takes the weight of shame off that she's not keeping up. And to be able to say, okay, if I'm going to keep doing this job, I need to figure out what are my priorities. I need to redefine what I think I have to do. Where can I simplify? Where can I delegate something away? Where can I templatize something to make it easier? Or where can I find good enough for certain tasks so I've got space for excellence in other ones? Yeah. And it's all about looking at where are my priorities? Let me talk to my boss. Let me talk to intern myself and say, where can I find some capacity here? Because I can't keep this going.
Yeah. And I think that people just don't take the time to do that.
And it's the pause. It's so important because you got to go inside, because there's also so much hustle culture noise that we're hearing about the guy who gets up earliest and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the guy who gets up earliest ends up quitting his job and joining the circus because he hates his life. Like, no. It's the most toxic thing we can believe. You're going, push all the time. No. Yeah, I'm with you. Pause for a sec. That is not sustainable. We have a mental health epidemic right now. We have suicide epidemic. We have a burnout epidemic, which is not helping anybody be better at their jobs, right? So by pausing, we can say, all right, cool. What are the actual priorities? How do I do this? And consider the big move. Another tip in my book that people talk about a lot. Maybe you don't quit your job and join the circus. But by considering it, you start to look at, okay, what do I like about where I'm staying? Now I'm going to stay on purpose rather than feeling like I'm trapped. Or I am going to join the circus or get another job or ask, whatever.
Yeah, because there's this belief that this is the only option you have.
Letting go.
But it's especially in today's world, it is absolutely not true. There are always choices. I just spoke with someone this afternoon, and she was so excited because she's like, I'm gonna take the leap and start my business. She's like, but I'm scared. I'm terrified. I'm gonna start my own business. And I reminded her. I said, hey, by the way, look, if you make this decision and if it doesn't work out, guess what? You get to make another decision later. There's another branch that you could, like, you're not stuck on that one branch for life. No one is. It's, again, an illusion of the mind.
Right. I think so many people think that when they make a big move, they're like, oh my God, it has to work. No, it doesn't. Like, I remember when I was leaving my big fat corporate job in New York City 10 years ago to start my speaking business. Somebody said to me, what if it doesn't work? And the first funny part is I hadn't even considered that. And I'm standing there like looking like a dope in front of her, like, I hadn't thought of that. But I was like, I'll just get another job. Like, I mean, it was just like I'll just do something else, Right. Fortunately for me, it worked, and I could have gotten another job, I mean, everything's figure-outable. Marie Forleo said that, that's her book. We can
my wife, Alex, has that on her desk.
Yeah.
Everything is figure-outable.
Yep. And that's why I call it dancing in the discomfort zone, not standing in it or walking through it. I mean, it's a dance. You go this way, you learn something, you go that way, and no matter what happens, you're learning. Yeah. Which is helping you figure out what is the right direction for now.
Yeah, and when you're dancing, you're not a very good dancer if you're an incredibly rigid dancer, right?
And it feels that way sometimes, but at least you're moving.
At least you're moving. But like once you start to loosen up, then you start to realize, hey, I got some pretty good moves here on this dance floor. I feel really comfortable here, but I just have to keep my body flexible and adjustable.
And it's that trust in yourself.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to ask you about Gabriella's confidence. I feel like that's a big issue for her. She seems to fall into self-doubt. Like, am I even doing a good job? Does my CEO think I'm doing a good job? How do you help people in that kind of space where there's imposter syndrome comes up, where they're really fearful that they're not delivering a result?
Yeah. And again, that comes from that place of good intention. I want to do a great job. I don't feel like I'm doing a great job now. And all of the doubt starts to come in. Yeah. And it's understanding, first of all, that you're not alone in this. Like, she has a whole team with her and her boss and the people that she works with to be able to say, okay, I need to reassess this. And one of the things that people are afraid to do is say, I am overwhelmed. But the problem is, and it goes back to the whole, what happens if I stay or what happens if I do that? You're uncomfortable either way. What happens if I say, I can't sustain this? And what happens if you don't say it? Yeah. Right? You say it, and at least you might be on the path to getting it better. But pausing and saying, okay, cool, this is unsustainable. Let me find out what my priorities are. Let me learn a little bit more about my situation right now. The other thing we also need to be able to do is find our escape that gets our mind out of the swirl. Because when you're in a place like Gabriella is, she's thinking about this all the time. Yeah. You can't not, because you care. You want to get it right. You don't know what the solution is. And so you kind of swirl around in it all the time. It impacts your sleep. It impacts your social time. So find that thing that gets your mind off of it, whether it's playing with the dog, going to the boxing gym, reading a book, doing a puzzle, running around with your kids, whatever, I don't care. Go to a death metal concert and scream your brains out. Whatever, or meditate, whatever works for you. But having that thing that gets your mind off of it can help bring a little clarity when you get back to thinking about it.
It's true, because the subconscious is still doing its job.
Right.
The subconscious is still doing its job. So you allow for the conscious mind to just be able to escape it for a while. Yeah. You step away from it. It gives you another perspective because you're not so engaged in the inner dialogue. And then when you do come back to it, I know I've had that experience, and where I come back to something and I'm like, oh, that's going to be the right action I should be taking. This is how I should handle this problem.
Right. It allows your subconscious to come through, because when we're swirling around in our conscious mind, freaking out about it, our subconscious is like, shh, I can't get through. Like, we know the answer. And this is the other thing. It comes back to the trust of self, right?
Yeah.
We know the answer. We just need to be willing to sit in a dark room for a minute and trust ourselves and say, what is the right move here? What do I do next? And you may not see the whole path. Again, we're dancing. We're like Elaine on Seinfeld, like trying to figure it out. It's ugly and it's awkward and it feels like crap. But
Yeah.
as long as we're continuing to move, we're continuing to learn things and we're continuing to open the door for the next step.
And what I think could be helpful is I'll use the analogy of dancing because we're talking about, when you are dancing, you have a partner there. And so it could be that you just need to have a conversation with the right person who can offer you a different perspective or ask you the right questions, because you're in your own head trying to figure it all out. But it could be just one question, one statement, something someone does, and even their facial expression that wakes you up to, oh, I haven't even been looking at it that way.
Right. And I love that you're framing this in a perspective sense and not an answer sense.
Right.
Right? Because having these, I call them circular conversations. Let's just throw around some ideas, not necessarily with a end in mind, but let's throw around some ideas. What are some perspective shifts? How else could we think about this? Do I really have to do it that way? I think we get so stuck in the rules and the have tos and the shoulds that we don't free ourselves up to other possibilities. And so listening to a podcast, reading a book, talking to somebody in your network, talking to somebody completely separate from your industry, talking to your boss who's completely in the exact situation, thinking about who's the right person to bring in and trusting your instinct on that. Who's the first person pops in your head? Go have that conversation and then go from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And with Gabriella, what she's also having is she's dealing with a CEO who's constantly throwing different things at her.
Right.
And so when obviously there's a part of these dynamics that always include how we work with people and how we communicate with people and how we respond and the way in which we process things, especially when it's a person of authority. So what are your thoughts on how to handle a leader like that who is like firing all these different ideas at you and you're just trying to figure out, what do I do with all this?
Right. So that person can come in two forms. They can come in the form of somebody who, if you were to say, okay, hold on just a sec, I'm overwhelmed and I can't take this all in. And they're going to be like, all right, cool, let's sit down and talk about this. I care about you and I know you need to be able to function. Or there's the other form where they're like, I don't care, figure it out, deal with yourself. And so if you've got the first type, you can have a great constructive conversation with them and you can work together to get to a place where you can actually succeed. If you have the other type, you have to say, okay, cool, I need to go over here in a dark room and I need to think about how I relate to this person. Is this the right person to be my leader? This is where we're considering the big move. Yep. Do I apply for a different job within the company, outside of the company? Do I join the circus? Well, what is it? What do I need here? What can I do in the context of this situation? And is that acceptable to me? Because sometimes with a leader who's not a very good leader, who isn't people focused and isn't willing to have that conversation of how you can be successful and they can be successful too, you have to start to think, okay, is this the right place for me? And again, this is branch to branch. We got to think about letting go to look at where can I bring my best to work.
And what I think, I want to be cautious for any listener to assume that your leader is just the second person in this.
You're absolutely right.
Right? Because that's the easier route.
It's just harder. Assume they're not going to take it well. You're 100% right. Yep.
It's harder to have that honest conversation in regards to, hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now, and I really want to talk to you about how to work through it. Would that be okay? And now, in that honest conversation, being vulnerable, if the data you're getting back leads you to realize it's the second type of person, then you start to go into that big picture thinking like you were saying.
Right.
But I find, especially in the people I've coached, and they're surprised that oftentimes their leader is more that first type of person.
And I think even, especially today, because leaders are realizing if I don't care about my people, they're gonna leave. I mean, there's... and so I think you're absolutely right, because it is uncomfortable to have that conversation. And I think it's really important to figure out how to have that conversation well,
Yep.
And to go in with a solution focus versus a problem focus. Just going in and saying, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do this anymore, doesn't give them much to work with. But saying, here's what I think could be a solution. I would love to talk to you about priorities. Is there any way I can get some more help, or can somebody else do this so I can focus on this? And it's coming in with possible solutions. Now we have a conversation, and you're not just saying, I can't do this, you need to fix it.
Yeah. And it's okay too. And this is where you have to have the emotional intelligence. And I know that's a big part of what you often talk about, to be able to recognize the kind of leader you're speaking with, because it could be a good approach, not to say you have to fix this, but I would love to get your advice.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear from you how you think I can be better at prioritizing my tasks. That could be a really good strategy, because now that CEO, that leader, is really more bought in. They're giving you advice, and now it's a co-collaborative process versus it's just trying to impose a solution onto the other leader.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point, because we need to go in with potentially with some possible solutions, but again, also open to theirs, because it does need to be that two-way dialogue. And so saying, I can't sustain this, and I would love your help with this because I want to do a good job. I love the work we do. I love working for you, and I want to do a good job, and I don't feel like I am right now, and something's got to change. So can we, I'd love your advice, and I love that line too.
Yeah, and this is, Gabriella, of course, is based on an actual person who I worked closely with. And so the situation was very similar in that there was a very demanding CEO. And the pattern that she fell down would fall into the victim mindset a little bit, and she wasn't aware of it until I really called it out for her. And just complaining a bit, and it's going like this, and you did that, and they did this, and why does this person? And instead it required that, hey, let's have this honest conversation. And the CEO was much more empathetic and compassionate than she thought they would be.
Well, and I think having a conversation with somebody who will call you out on your stuff before you go in to talk to the boss, especially if you don't know which one they are, right? Saying, hey, call me out here. What am I making up? Where am I being a victim? Where am I just complaining? Where do I need to take responsibility? Yeah. And where can I ask for help? Yeah,
and I think that one thing too is like sometimes less is more. You can just tell me what you think of this. You can just state that, hey, this is what I'm feeling, and I just want to talk to you about it, and then get quiet. Right? Because the next thing they say will give you a lot of information.
Yeah. And being willing to be quiet, ask for that help, and then say, hey, I would love your help with this.
Right, because if we go on this big diatribe of, and it's this, and it's this, and this, and now we sound like we're on our soapbox, and it sounds really too emotional. And if you have, especially a CEO that's like, I'm about getting results. Right, I got to get to my next meeting here. Being concise and honest and vulnerable could completely shift that relationship. Right. The CEO could look at you completely different just because you were willing to say it, and then allow them to engage you.
Yeah. And even I think your point about being concise is so important, because especially when we're nervous, we're walking into this conversation we don't want to have, we're uncomfortable, we're changing the way we're asking to interact, right? So even this is a change. And when we're uncomfortable, we say all the words. And so I think it's really important to get it together and perhaps say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. I would love your help in trying to figure out how to deal with this. I have a few ideas, but I know you're seeing it from a different perspective. Can we have a conversation about this? That says, I've thought about it. I want your input, but I also have some as well. I'm not just coming saying guns blazing.
Yeah, and I like the way you framed it earlier, which is I really want to deliver. I really want to do a great job.
Want to do a good job, yeah.
Right, and if you're speaking to a CEO that has some leadership skills, right, and are able to is able to hear that from you, then the conversation is framed in a way where, okay, it's a coaching moment. It's a coaching moment.
How can we both be successful?
Yeah, how can we both be successful? We're all after the same thing. Right. And so I want you to and imagine if you did have a chance to meet Gabriella in this story, and let's say she attended one of your keynotes and was inspired by what you shared. She came up to you in one of the breaks, told you what she's going through, and you had an opportunity to listen and then offer her a question or two to help her to think differently, to shift her perspective. What would you ask her, and where would you start? What would you ask her first?
Well, I think the two things that I would ask are, have you talked to your boss about this yet? As we just talked about. And second of, what do you think you have to do? And do you really have to do those things? That would be a big question that I would ask, because I think so often we put these rules around what we need to do that don't actually apply. And so that would be one of the things I'd ask her after I gave her a big hug, because this is hard.
I think the hug is a great way to start. Yeah, a hug, as well as when you ask her that way, you're inviting her to take full inventory of what she is telling herself she has to do, and then, do you really? Is that true? Are there other ways that you? It's amazing how someone just being asked would be like, well, I guess I never really thought that there are other ways.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you can't read the label from inside the jar. That's why having conversations with people about this stuff, being vulnerable, people completely outside of the situation, can help them go, well, what about this? And you're like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
Right.
Having those conversations, super valuable.
Absolutely. And I think having this conversation with you has been incredibly valuable for me. And so I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with me. And for anyone listening, the podcast is Dancing in the Discomfort Zone. That's the title. Anyone could find it. And what would also be the best place for people to find you? I know I saw you on LinkedIn as well. Where are you most active? Where would you want people to go to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Anne Bonney, you'll find me. You'll see my red hair. Yourchangespeaker.com is my website, so you can go there as well. AnneBonney.com will get you there too. And you'll find everything you need. You can get in touch with me there.
Yourchangespeaker.com. We will put that into the show notes for everybody. And thank you again for doing this. This was amazing. I look forward. I always listen to recordings after to pull out some of the insights and actionable takeaways. I really look forward to this one.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me on too. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate it.
After listening back to that conversation with Anne, one thing I noticed is that she was so good at communicating her ideas concisely. And when I wrote my notes, I wrote a lot of notes, but she was able to say more with less, which is just a different lesson altogether that we can all learn, being more concise and brief. Anne did a fantastic job of that, and I will do my best to synthesize it down into 3 insights and 3 actionable takeaways. The first insight: you must let go of one branch to get to the other one. That's how a monkey will move, right? The monkey goes from one branch to the other. It's that letting go that can be really hard for us, because our brains are wired to seek out the same. The same is safe. So we haven't yet gotten the override of that program. So we really have to look at it from the perspective of not what am I losing, but what am I gaining? What's on the other branch that I could be leaning into and embracing? So it's a shift in perspective to help us to be able to more effectively work through change. The second insight: don't wait until you feel brave. You will wait forever. Anne talked about anticipatory stress, the idea about the change, the idea about what could be coming. We need to be able to work through that fear of the unknown. And one way we do this is by seeking out uncomfortable experiences. Get yourself into a routine whereby you are working that muscle, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is in the brain, that you're building that up to be able to be more fluid and adaptable and be able to step into the unknown. And also trusting yourself, trusting your future self. If you're waiting until you feel brave right now, you're going to wait forever. So instead, say, I'm going to make the change now, and future me, I trust, will figure out how to handle it. Third insight: it doesn't have to work. We think that everything has to work, right? It has to be perfect. You could always make another choice in the future. Everything is figure-outable. We don't need to have everything figured out before we step into the unknown. And one thing I thought was really interesting was when she brought up that you're going to be uncomfortable either way. So do we want the discomfort of what we know or the discomfort of what we don't know? And there's this illusion that we know things, the illusion of security, the illusion of control. We have to let go of that illusion. And oftentimes, the discomfort of what we don't know is going to lead us to greater results. And our best option is to lean into that. Our actionable takeaways. First of 3, acknowledge your reality. Acknowledge your intention. You want to do well. You want to succeed. You want to achieve at a high level. And acknowledge if you're overwhelmed, if there's too much on your plate, if there's a lot of change that's creating a lot of disruption. Then in that acknowledgement, take inventory of what are your priorities. What do you actually have to do instead of trying to do it all? Second actionable takeaway, find your escape. Maybe it's puzzles, maybe it's going out for a walk with the dog, something to just get your mind off of what's happening when you're really feeling stressed out and overwhelmed. That way you can revisit it with a fresh perspective. Third actionable takeaway, have circular conversations. These conversations are with people, of course, you can trust, that you can confide in, and you're not really seeking answers. You're just having the conversation to consider different perspectives. And if the person of whom you're looking to have this conversation with is your leader, give them the benefit of the doubt. Still have a solution in mind, so you're not only problem focused. Have a suggestion of how you think you can improve things if there's something that needs to be addressed. But don't just assume the leader is not going to be open to the conversation. Assume that they would, and if you then get the feedback from that conversation that, hey, this leader is not open to this and I can't really get on the same page with them, then you may want to be considering, is this the right place for me? Join us on Friday's episode. It's going to be the day after Thanksgiving. And with Thanksgiving, we always are considering what we are grateful for. And I thought we can take some time to look into the science of all of this and the research behind it. And rather than it being something that we only are reminded of on certain days of the year when society tells us to remember to be grateful, I want to give you some ways in which you can incorporate more gratitude into your day-to-day, so that it's something that you integrate, because there's so much value in practicing gratitude. You know what I mean by gratitude, of course. What I think can oftentimes be, we could forget, is how to practice it, how to make it something where it is tapping into a completely different mindset than the natural one, which is to always focus on the things we don't have and keep chasing things, to be reminded of appreciating the things that we do have. That will be on Friday's episode. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.